My wife said, "I'm changing my last name. I'm moving in with a real man," my wife beamed. I calmly co-signed. A week later, her own father stormed in, white as a sheet, holding a notice. "The name," he choked out. "Tell me you didn't just let him void the family name." Look, I've sat through some pretty uncomfortable dinners in my life. There was that Thanksgiving when Uncle Jerry got drunk and started explaining his cryptocurrency portfolio to the mashed potatoes. And then there was the time my mother-in-law spent 3 hours describing her bunion surgery in excruciating detail while we tried to eat lasagna. But tonight was about to become the heavyweight champion of awkward dining experiences, and I didn't even know it yet. The restaurant was one of those places where they put the menu in a leather binder like it's the Constitution, and the waiter introduces himself like you're about to become lifelong pen pals. "Good evening, I'm Sebastian, and I'll be guiding your culinary journey this evening." "Sure, Sebastian. Guide away, buddy. Just bring me something with carbs, and don't judge me when I pronounce quinoa wrong." Marissa had been acting weird all week. Not her usual brand of weird, which involved reorganizing the pantry at 2 in the morning or watching true crime documentaries while doing Pilates. No, this was a different flavor of strange. She'd been texting constantly, smiling at her phone like it was telling her jokes I wasn't cool enough to hear, and she'd bought a new dress specifically for this dinner. A red one. The kind of red that says, "I'm about to make a scene," in every language including sign language. I should have known something was coming when she invited her entire friend group. Sarah, who thinks namaste is a personality trait. Jennifer, who's been divorced 3 times and treats marriage like a subscription service she keeps canceling. And Rebecca, who once told me at a barbecue that my energy was very beige. Thanks, Rebecca. Your energy is very unemployed, but I kept that observation to myself because I'm classy like that. The appetizers had just arrived. Some kind of deconstructed bruschetta that looked like someone had a fight with a tomato and lost. When Marissa stood up, she actually stood up, right there in the middle of the restaurant, and picked up her wine glass. My first thought was, oh God, she's pregnant. My second thought was, wait, we haven't had sex in 4 months, so that would be quite the miracle. My third thought never got to finish forming because that's when she started talking. "I have an announcement," she said, and her voice had that practice quality, like she'd been rehearsing this in the car. Probably used the rearview mirror as her audience and everything. The entire table went quiet. Even Sebastian, who was hovering nearby with a pepper grinder the size of a baseball bat, froze like someone had hit pause on him. "I want to thank you all for being here tonight," Marissa continued, and I'm sitting there thinking this is either a really elaborate birthday surprise I forgot about, or I'm about to become a character in someone's therapy session. I've been doing a lot of soul-searching lately, and I've realized that I deserve more. I deserve to be with someone who truly sees me, who values me, who makes me feel alive. Oh boy, here we go. I could feel the temperature in the room drop about 15 degrees, and not because Sebastian had opened a window. This was the kind of cold that comes from impending social disaster, the kind weathermen should warn you about. "So," she said, and she clinked her glass with a spoon like we were at a wedding reception and she was about to roast the groom. "I've decided to make a change. I'm changing my last name." She paused for dramatic effect, really letting that sentence marinate in the shocked silence. "I'm moving in with a real man." The gasps that erupted around that table could have powered a small wind turbine. Jennifer's hand flew to her mouth. Sarah knocked over her water glass. Rebecca looked like she'd just witnessed a UFO landing in the breadbasket. And me? I just sat there, fork halfway to my mouth, still holding a piece of that deconstructed bruschetta that was now probably the most stable thing at this table. That's when I noticed him. Grant. He'd been sitting 2 tables over, and now he was standing up with this smile that could only be described as predatory. The guy looked like a used car salesman who'd just convinced someone to buy the extended warranty on a 1987 Civic. He was wearing a tuxedo to a casual dinner, which should have been my first red flag. But hindsight is 2020, and I was still processing the fact that my wife had just announced our divorce like it was a gender reveal party. He walked over, actually strutted, like he was on a runway in Milan instead of a moderately priced Italian restaurant in the suburbs, and put his arm around Marissa. She melted into him like butter on hot pancakes, and her friends started clapping. Actually clapping. Like this was a performance, and they were the audience giving a standing ovation to the death of my marriage. Ben's been so understanding about all of this, Marissa said, looking at me with what I can only describe as manufactured pity. He knows I need to follow my heart. Understanding? Lady, I didn't even understand why you bought 17 throw pillows for a couch that seats 3 people. But sure, let's pretend I'm on board with this circus. Grant extended his hand to me. No hard feelings, man. Sometimes people just grow apart. I looked at his hand like it was offering me a timeshare presentation, but I shook it anyway because my mother raised me with manners, even if his mother apparently raised him in a barn where they taught advanced courses in home wrecking. None at all, I said, and I meant it. Not because I'm some enlightened Buddha figure who's above earthly emotions, but because I was too busy doing mental math. See, there was something these 2 lovebirds didn't know. Something Marissa had clearly forgotten in her rush to find a real man who probably couldn't change a tire without calling AAA. Marissa pulled out papers from her purse. Actual papers. She'd brought divorce documents to dinner like they were the dessert menu. I just need you to sign these, she said sweetly. I've already had my lawyer look everything over. It's all very straightforward. Straightforward. Right. I scanned the documents quickly. Standard stuff, mostly. Division of assets, custody arrangements. We don't have kids, thank God. And there it was, her request to legally change her name from Hollis to Grant. Effective immediately. I pulled out my pen, a nice one, a Mont Blanc my grandfather gave me, which felt appropriate for what was about to happen, and I signed. Just like that. Signed away 12 years of marriage with the same flourish I used to sign credit card receipts at Target. The table erupted in more applause. Jennifer was crying happy tears. Sarah was already taking photos for what I assumed would become an Instagram post about female empowerment. Rebecca nodded at me approvingly, like I'd finally done something that elevated my beige energy to maybe a light tan. You're being so mature about this, Marissa said, and she actually looked surprised. Like she'd expected me to flip the table or challenge Grant to a duel or something equally dramatic. Of course, I said, raising my wine glass. To new beginnings. May your real man teach you about real consequences. They all drank to that, completely missing the second part of my toast. Grant ordered champagne, the expensive kind. On my credit card, naturally. I didn't even flinch. Let him have his moment. Let them all have their moment. Because while they were toasting and taking selfies and planning Marissa's new life as Mrs. Grant, I was thinking about a conversation I'd had with my grandfather about 20 years ago. We'd been sitting in his study, the one that smelled like old books and older money, and he'd tapped a thick leather binder on his desk. Benjamin, he'd said, using my full name like he always did when he was about to drop knowledge. The Hollis name isn't just a name. It's a contract. It's a legacy. And there are rules. He'd opened that binder and pointed to a clause. Provision 9b, it was called. Never let anyone disrespect this name. And if they do, if they voluntarily remove themselves from it, make sure they understand what they're giving up. At the time, I'd been 19 and more interested in whether I could borrow his car for the weekend. But now those words were echoing in my head like a prophecy finally coming true. I watched Marissa and Grant feed each other tiramisu, and I smiled. A real smile. The kind that comes from knowing something nobody else at the table knows. She thought she was leaving me. But really? She'd just signed herself out of something much bigger than a marriage. She'd voluntarily exited the Hollis family trust, the Hollis estate, and every single benefit that came with carrying that last name. And the best part? She did it in front of witnesses, with legal documentation, while wearing a red dress and drinking champagne she couldn't afford. More wine? Sebastian asked, appearing at my elbow with impeccable timing. Please, I said, and keep it coming. I'm celebrating. Celebrating what, sir? I looked at Marissa, who was now showing off her new last name by practicing her signature on a napkin like a teenager doodling her crush's name in a notebook. My wife just pressed the self-destruct button on her entire future, I said quietly, and she thinks it's a launch pad. Sebastian looked confused, but he poured the wine anyway. Good man, Sebastian. Very good man indeed. I got home around 11, which was impressive considering I'd consumed enough wine to pickle a small elephant. The Uber driver tried to make conversation about cryptocurrency, and I just nodded along while mentally calculating how much money Marissa had just cost herself. Spoiler alert, it was more than whatever Bitcoin was worth that week. The house was empty. Obviously, Marissa had apparently moved out while we were at dinner. which showed a level of pre-planning that would have been impressive if it wasn't being used to nuke her own financial stability. Her closet was cleared out, her bathroom counter was bare except for one bobby pin she'd missed, and there was a note on the kitchen counter that said, "I'll send someone for the rest of my things." Sure, sweetheart. Send whoever you want. Just make sure they have the security clearance, because after tomorrow morning, this house is going to have more locks than Fort Knox. I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon. The good stuff, the 18-year-old Pappy Van Winkle that Marissa always said was too expensive to actually drink. Well, guess what? Tonight felt like the perfect occasion. I grabbed the bottle, grabbed a glass, and headed to my office, the one room in this house that Marissa had never bothered to understand or care about. See, Marissa thought my office was where I played video games and avoided her requests to organize the garage. She wasn't entirely wrong, but she'd missed the filing cabinet in the corner. The one that required 2 keys and a combination to open. The one that held documents she'd never bothered to ask about because she assumed Hollis was just my last name and nothing more. That was her first mistake. Well, technically her second, if we're counting Grant as mistake number 1. I unlocked the cabinet and pulled out the binder. It was thick, leather-bound, and had that old document smell that somehow makes everything inside seem more official and slightly intimidating. The cover had 3 words embossed in gold lettering: Hollis Family Holdings. Now, let me paint you a picture here. The Hollis family isn't Rockefeller-level rich or anything, but we're comfortable. Very comfortable. The kind of comfortable where you don't have to check your bank account before buying things, and you can afford to have opinions about wine regions. My great-great-grandfather made his fortune in railroads back when that was still a thing people did, and every generation since has been smart enough not to blow it all on yachts and bad investments. We own property. A lot of property. Commercial buildings downtown, a few apartment complexes, some land that keeps getting more valuable as the city expands outward like America's waistline. We have a foundation that does charitable work and also serves as a convenient tax shelter. We have investments managed by people whose entire job is to make our money have more money, like some kind of financial mitosis. And all of it, every single asset, every account, every benefit, is tied to one thing: the Hollis name. I flipped through the binder, past the property deeds and stock certificates, past the trust documents and corporate bylaws, until I found the page I was looking for. It was in the section my grandfather had labeled Family Law and Legacy Protection, which sounds like something out of a medieval kingdom, but is actually just rich people code for how to make sure gold diggers don't get our stuff. There it was. Provision 9B. I'd read it 100 times over the years, usually when I was bored and avoiding real work, but I'd never actually thought I'd need to use it. It was like a fire extinguisher, good to have around, hopefully never necessary. The provision was written in that special language lawyers use when they want to make sure something is both crystal clear and completely incomprehensible to normal humans. But the summary version, the part my grandfather had written in the margin in his chicken scratch handwriting, was beautifully simple. Legal name disassociation equals permanent forfeiture of all trust entitlements. Let me translate that into English for you. If anyone who marries into the Hollis family voluntarily decides to drop the Hollis name, not through divorce, mind you, but through active choice, they immediately and permanently lose access to everything the trust provides. And the trust provides a lot. We're talking about the penthouse apartment Marissa had been living in rent-free. The car she drove, a Mercedes SUV that cost more than most people's houses. The credit cards linked to family accounts. The health insurance that covered everything, including that elective procedure she got last year that she swore was medically necessary, but was really just cosmetic. The country club membership. The investment account that had been set up in her name as a wedding gift. The education fund we'd established for future children that she'd recently been eyeing for a personal development retreat in Bali. All of it. Gone. Poof. Vanished like my will to live during Marissa's juice cleanse phase. And the best part? She'd done it to herself. I didn't force her. I didn't trick her. I literally signed the papers she brought me. She'd voluntarily, enthusiastically, in front of witnesses and with legal documentation, removed herself from the Hollis name. I took a long sip of bourbon and felt it burn its way down my throat in the most satisfying way possible. This was better than any revenge I could have planned. This was poetic justice, served with a side of karmic irony. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Gerald. Gerald Pemberton, senior partner at Whitmore and Associates, the law firm that had been handling Hollis family business since before I was born. Gerald was probably in his 70s now, but he had the mind of a legal shark and the disposition of someone who genuinely enjoyed crushing people's dreams when they deserved it. It was almost midnight, but Gerald had once told me, "Benjamin, if you ever need me to destroy someone's life at an inconvenient hour, please don't hesitate to call." I'm paraphrasing, but that was the general vibe. The phone rang 3 times before his gravelly voice answered. "Benjamin Hollis. It's been a while. Someone finally do something stupid enough to warrant activating the family protocols." "Gerald, my friend, you're going to love this," I said, and I could hear myself grinning through the words. My wife just voluntarily dropped the Hollis name, signed the papers herself, announced it at dinner in front of witnesses, even posted about it on social media before we left the restaurant. There was a pause, and then Gerald started laughing. Not a polite chuckle, a full-on, wheezing belly laugh that sounded like it might require medical intervention. "Oh, she finally said the line, didn't she?" With enthusiasm, I confirmed. "She's changing it to Grant. Moving in with her real man." I put air quotes around that last part even though he couldn't see them. "A real man," Gerald repeated, still chuckling. "Does this real man know about Provision 9B? I'm going to go ahead and guess no." "Outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. Do you want me to start the paperwork tonight, or would you like to savor this moment a bit longer?" "Activate it," I said. "Effective immediately. I want every account frozen, every access code changed, every benefit suspended by the time she wakes up tomorrow morning. Make it thorough, Gerald. Make it biblical." "Biblical. I like that. Consider it done. I'll have my team start processing everything within the hour. We'll send official notification letters, update all the relevant institutions, and make sure every single thing tied to the Hollis Trust is locked down tighter than a duck's ass in a windstorm." Gerald had a way with words. "Oh, and Benjamin," he added, "I've been waiting 40 years for someone to trigger this clause. Your grandfather would be proud. He always said that Provision would catch someone eventually. He just never thought it would be a spouse who essentially divorced herself out of a fortune." "She thinks she's upgrading," I said. "She thinks wrong," Gerald replied. "I'll email you the confirmation paperwork in the morning. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a beautiful day." He hung up, and I sat there in my office, staring at that binder, feeling something I hadn't felt in months, maybe years. I felt vindicated. Not angry, not sad, not even particularly bitter. Just satisfied. Marissa had spent our entire marriage treating the Hollis name like it was just a label, something decorative she wore to dinner parties. She'd never asked about the family business, never shown interest in the legacy, never bothered to understand that being a Hollis meant something beyond having a fancy signature. She'd introduce herself as Marissa at events, actively avoiding using the last name. She'd roll her eyes when my uncle talked about family obligations. She'd once said at Thanksgiving, and I quote, "It's just a name. It's not like it defines who you are." Well, sweetheart, turns out it kind of does. At least financially. I closed the binder and put it back in the cabinet, locking it with the same care someone might use to seal a tomb. Ancient curses and all that. Then I went to the kitchen, got the entire bottle of Pappy Van Winkle, and sat on the couch in the dark, drinking expensive bourbon and thinking about how my grandfather used to say, "The best revenge is living well, but the second best revenge is watching someone destroy themselves while you do absolutely nothing." I didn't have to yell, didn't have to fight, didn't have to be the bad guy in this story. I just had to sit back, sign some papers, and let the legal system do exactly what it was designed to do: protect the family legacy from people who didn't respect it. My phone buzzed. A notification from Instagram. Marissa had posted a photo of her and Grant in front of what looked like his apartment building. The caption read, "Starting my new chapter with my new name and my new love. Hashtag fresh start, hashtag new beginnings, hashtag real love, hashtag Marissa Grant." I stared at that hashtag. Marissa Grant. She'd already changed it. Already committed. Already sealed her fate with a social media post. I raised my glass to the screen. "Welcome to your new chapter, Marissa Grant. I hope it has good Wi-Fi, because you're going to need it when you start Googling how to afford rent." Then I drank the rest of my bourbon, turned off my phone, and went to bed in the California king-size bed that was now entirely, gloriously, legally mine. Tomorrow morning, Gerald's team would start the process. By tomorrow afternoon, Marissa would start realizing her mistake. By tomorrow evening, she'd be panicking. But tonight? Tonight, I slept like a baby. A wealthy, vindicated baby wrapped in 800 thread-count sheets that she'd never touch again. Waking up the morning after your wife publicly dumps you should feel terrible, right? There should be some kind of emotional devastation. Maybe a montage where I listen to sad songs and eat ice cream directly from the container while wearing the same sweatpants for 3 days straight. Instead, I woke up feeling like I'd won the lottery, except better because lottery winners don't get to watch their ex-wives step on a legal landmine while wearing designer heels. I made myself a proper breakfast. Eggs, bacon, toast, the whole 9 yards. Marissa used to do this thing where she'd make herself a green smoothie that looked like liquefied grass clippings and then judge me for eating inflammatory foods. Well, Marissa, guess what's inflammatory? Voluntarily making yourself poor. That's what's inflammatory. My phone had been suspiciously quiet all morning, which meant Gerald's team was working faster than I'd expected. It was like watching a military operation, except instead of airstrikes, they were launching legal documents. I checked my email while eating my definitely inflammatory bacon. There it was, a message from Gerald with the subject line, Operation Name Drop, Status Update. The man had a sense of humor that would make most people uncomfortable, which is exactly why he'd been the family lawyer for 40 years. The email was beautiful in its efficiency. Every account had been frozen. Every access code had been changed. Every benefit had been suspended. The penthouse apartment's locks had been changed at 6 a.m. by a locksmith who apparently didn't ask questions when you paid him enough. The Mercedes dealership had been notified that the vehicle lease was terminated. The country club had removed her membership. Even her gym access had been revoked, which felt petty but also incredibly satisfying. Gerald had attached a PDF titled Comprehensive Asset Reclamation Summary, which was lawyer speak for here's everything we took away from her. It was 17 pages long. 17 pages of things Marissa had enjoyed as a Hollis that she would no longer enjoy as a Grant. I was on page 6, reading about the cancellation of her premium cable package. Apparently we were paying for HBO, Showtime, and Stars, which explained why our entertainment budget looked like a small country's GDP when my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. 2 seconds later, another call. Same unknown number. Then a text. Ben, pick up your phone right now. Oh, there she was. I'd been wondering how long it would take. I let it ring 4 more times before I answered, making sure to sound slightly confused, like I'd just woken up from a nap. Hello. What the hell did you do? Marissa's voice came through the phone like a tornado made of rage and expensive hairspray. Good morning to you too, sweetheart. How's the fresh start going? Don't you dare. My key doesn't work. My cards aren't working. My Sierra is gone. What did you do? I took a sip of my coffee. Colombian blend, medium roast, way better than those pretentious artisanal beans she used to buy from that coffee shop where the baristas all had handlebar mustaches and opinions about capitalism. I didn't do anything. You're the one who changed your name, remember? That has nothing to do with. Actually, it has everything to do with it. See, when you dropped the Hollis name, you also dropped all the Hollis benefits. It's in the family trust documentation. Provision 9B. Real catchy stuff. Gerald sent me the paperwork last night. Want me to forward it to you? Silence on the other end. Not peaceful silence. The kind of silence that happens right before a volcano erupts or a divorce gets really expensive. Oh wait, the divorce was already expensive. For her, anyway. You can't do this, she finally said, and her voice had gone from angry to something else. Panicked, maybe? Desperate? I couldn't quite place it, but it was definitely in the neighborhood of, oh crap, I really screwed up. I didn't do anything, I repeated. You signed the papers. You announced it publicly. You posted it on Instagram with hashtags and everything. You changed your name to Grant of your own free will. The trust just responded accordingly. But the apartment, Ben. My stuff is in there. My clothes, your stuff will be boxed up and delivered to whatever address you provide. Gerald's team is very thorough. They'll even use good boxes, not like those flimsy ones from the grocery store. First class all the way. This is insane. You're being vindictive. I laughed. Actually laughed. Vindictive would be me fighting you in court for years. Vindictive would be me making this difficult. Vindictive would be me doing literally anything other than exactly what you asked for. You wanted to be a Grant? Congratulations. You're a Grant. Grants don't have access to Hollis assets. Pretty simple math. My father is going to hear about this. Oh, I'm counting on it, I said cheerfully. In fact, tell him to check his business accounts. There might be some interesting developments there too. Another silence. This one lasted longer. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head, trying to figure out what that meant. What are you talking about? Her voice had gone quiet now. Dangerous quiet. Your dad's company, Harold's Commercial Enterprises, or whatever he's calling it these days. Who do you think guarantees his business loans? Who do you think co-signed his line of credit? I'll give you a hint. It rhymes with Molly's Family Trust. The sound she made was somewhere between a gasp and a whimper. You wouldn't. I wouldn't, I agreed. But the trust bylaws would. See, there's this thing called association by marriage. When you're a Hollis, your immediate family gets certain benefits. Better loan terms, better credit ratings, better everything. But when you stop being a Hollis, I trailed off, letting her imagination fill in the blanks. My brother's internship, she whispered. Also connected to the family name. Nepotism's great when it works for you, isn't it? Ben, please. We can fix this. I can change my name back. Can you, though? Because I'm pretty sure legal name changes aren't like Netflix subscriptions. You can't just cancel and restart whenever you want. There's paperwork, processing time, and even if you did change it back, the trust clause is pretty specific. Voluntary disassociation is permanent. You disassociated, voluntarily, in front of witnesses, while wearing red. Why are you doing this? And now she was crying. Real tears, not the manipulative ones she used to deploy when she wanted a new handbag or for me to agree to host her mother for Thanksgiving. I'm not doing anything, I said for the third time. You did this. You stood up in that restaurant and announced to everyone that you were leaving me for a real man. You posted about it on social media. You celebrated your new life. I'm just letting you live it. But I didn't know. That's the thing, Marissa. You never knew. You never asked. You never cared. You just assumed the money and the lifestyle would follow you wherever you went because you're pretty and charming and people usually give you what you want. But the Hollis family isn't people. It's a legacy. And legacies don't care about your feelings or your fresh starts. She was full-on sobbing now. Grant said you wouldn't do anything. He said you were too weak to fight back. Oh, Grant said that, did he? Interesting. Tell your real man that real men read contracts before they encourage their girlfriends to commit financial suicide. Also tell him the champagne he ordered at dinner last week. That was $400 a bottle. Hope he saved the receipt. What? The credit card he used. Or should I say, you used. That was the Hollis family card. It's been canceled. The charge got reversed this morning. So technically, he's about to get a bill from that restaurant for about $1,200, give or take. Including Sebastian's tip, which was generous because I was in a good mood. The sobbing stopped. Now there was just breathing. Heavy, angry breathing. You planned this, she said. I didn't plan anything. I just understood the rules of the game you didn't know we were playing. I hate you. You're entitled to your feelings. But hate doesn't pay rent, Marissa. Might want to figure that out before the first of the month. She hung up. Didn't even say goodbye. Rude. I finished my breakfast, did the dishes, because I'm civilized, and then spent the rest of the morning doing something I hadn't done in years, whatever I wanted. I went for a run without Marissa complaining that I was going to track dirt into the house. I watched a movie she would have hated. I ordered Chinese food for lunch, even though she always insisted it was too greasy and not organic. Around 3 p.m., I decided to check social media. I know. It's like picking at a scab, but sometimes you just need to see the damage. Marissa's Instagram was a goldmine of delusion. She'd posted 6 times in the past week, all of them documenting her new life. There was a photo of her and Grant holding hands in front of his apartment building with the caption, "Home is where the heart is." There was a selfie of her with her new driver's license showing her new last name. There was even a video of her packing boxes with the caption, "Out with the old, in with the new." But the post from this morning was my favorite. It was a photo of her and Grant in front of a BMW. Not the Mercedes she used to drive. A different car. His car, presumably. The caption read, "My real man knows how to treat me right. New name, new life, new adventures. Hashtag Marissa Grant, hashtag fresh start, hashtag living my best life." I read it 3 times, savoring every word like fine wine. Then I did something I probably shouldn't have done, but absolutely didn't regret. I commented, "Nice car. You should read the fine print on those lease agreements. Also, how's the apartment situation working out? Get those locks figured out yet?" The comment posted. I watched it sit there for exactly 43 seconds before it disappeared. Deleted. Too late, though. 17 people had already liked it, including Jennifer, Sarah, and Rebecca, her so-called friends who were apparently enjoying the drama as much as I was. My phone buzzed. A text from Gerald. "I see you're poking the bear. Professional advice. Stop. Personal advice. Keep going. This is hilarious." I texted back. "Just being helpful. Someone needs to explain reality to her. Reality is about to get very clear. The bank just processed the account freezes. Her father called my office 6 times in the past hour. I'm having my assistant tell him I'm in Barbados." "Are you in Barbados?" "I'm in my office eating a sandwich." "But he doesn't need to know that." I grinned at my phone. Gerald was earning every penny of his absolutely ridiculous hourly rate. Another text came through. This one from a number I didn't recognize. "You're going to regret this. Grant." Oh, the real man was weighing in now. How delightful. I texted back. "Only thing I regret is not activating that trust clause sooner. Tell me, how much is your rent?" Asking for a friend who's about to need roommates. He didn't respond. Coward. I spent the rest of the afternoon reading through the trust documents, not because I needed to, but because I was genuinely fascinated by how thoroughly my grandfather had protected the family assets. Every possible loophole was closed. Every potential exploit was accounted for. It was like reading a legal thriller, except it was real and Marissa was the unsuspecting victim. That night, I slept better than I had in years. No snoring from Marissa. No cold feet pressed against my legs. Number 2 a.m. wake-ups because she heard a noise that turned out to be the house settling. Just me, my California king bed, and the sweet, sweet sound of consequences catching up to people who absolutely deserve them. I was making myself a spectacular lunch, grilled cheese with 3 different kinds of cheese because I'm an adult and I can do what I want, when the pounding started. Not knocking. Pounding. The kind of aggressive door assault that makes you think either the police are here with a warrant or someone's about to have a really bad day. Spoiler alert, it wasn't the police. I looked through the peephole, and there he was. Harold Mitchell, my soon-to-be former father-in-law, looking like he'd just run a marathon through a car wash. His face was red enough to be a health hazard. His hair was doing that thing where it sticks up in weird places because he'd been running his hands through it. And he was sweating through his dress shirt like he'd just finished filming an infomercial for antiperspirant. That doesn't work. He pounded again. "Benjamin, open this door right now." I took a bite of my grilled cheese, chewed thoughtfully, and then opened the door with the kind of casual energy you'd use to greet a pizza delivery guy, not your enraged father-in-law, who looked like he was one blood pressure spike away from a medical emergency. "Harold, what a pleasant surprise. I wasn't expecting company. Come on in, I guess." He didn't wait for me to finish the sentence. He stormed past me like a linebacker on a mission, nearly knocking over the coat rack in the process. In his hand was a letter. Not just any letter. One of those official-looking ones with the law firm's letterhead that practically screams, "Your life is about to get complicated." I closed the door and leaned against it, still holding my grilled cheese. "Can I get you something to drink? Water? Coffee? A paper bag to breathe into?" "Don't you dare," he snarled, spinning around to face me. His finger was pointing at me like he was trying to cast a spell, or maybe just struggling to remember how pointing works when you're that angry. "Don't you dare act like this is funny." "I'm not acting like it's funny," I said, taking another bite. "I genuinely find it hilarious. There's a difference." His face somehow got redder. I didn't know that was physically possible, but Harold was apparently breaking new ground in cardiovascular stress responses. "Where is my daughter?" "Hopefully at her new place with her new man, living her new life. You know, the fresh start she posted about? With the hashtags? Very inspiring stuff, really. I almost cried. You know what I mean." He slammed the letter down on my kitchen counter with enough force that I worried about the granite. That counter cost a fortune and it was mine now, so I'd appreciate it if he didn't damage it. "Tell me you didn't let her change the name." I set down my grilled cheese, mostly because this conversation was about to require my full attention and I didn't want to accidentally drop melted cheese on my shirt. "I didn't let her do anything. She's a grown woman." She made a choice. I supported her choice by signing the papers she asked me to sign. I was being respectful of her autonomy. Isn't that what you always told me I should do? Support her decisions. That's not. He stopped, took a breath that sounded like it hurt, and tried again. You knew what would happen. You knew about the trust. I did, I agreed cheerfully. Did she? His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again like a fish that had just realized it was out of water and severely underprepared for air breathing. She's my daughter. And she was my wife. Past tense. By her choice. Announced publicly. In red. Did I mention she wore red? Very dramatic. Sebastian the waiter was riveted. Harold pressed his hands against my counter, leaning forward like he was trying to physically intimidate me through posture alone. It might have worked if I wasn't currently riding the high of justified revenge and excellent cheese. Do you have any idea what this means? Oh, I have several ideas. Why don't you tell me which one you're most concerned about? He grabbed the letter and shoved it at me. This is what I'm concerned about. I took it, unfolded it, and pretended to read it for the first time, even though I'd already seen a copy in my email. It was from Harold's bank, professionally informing him that his business line of credit was being reevaluated, and that his loan guarantees were being reviewed due to changes in guarantor status. Translation: Harold's business was built on a house of cards, and I'd just removed the bottom card by letting Marissa remove herself from the Hollis family. Huh, I said, looking up at him. That's unfortunate. Have you tried calling them? I called them. His voice cracked. Actually cracked. They said the Hollis Family Trust is withdrawing as guarantor on all my accounts. My accounts, Benjamin. My business accounts. Do you understand what that means? It means you should probably have a backup plan that doesn't involve being related to me. This will destroy me. The company can't operate without that credit line. I have payroll in 2 weeks. I have contracts that require bonding. I have. He stopped, putting his hand on his chest like he was checking to make sure his heart was still there. I have built this business over 30 years. That's impressive, I said, and I meant it. Sort of. But here's a question. Did you build it on your own merit? Or did you build it on the Hollis family's credit rating? His face did something complicated. Anger mixed with shame mixed with the dawning realization that maybe his success had been on loan this whole time. Your grandfather offered, he said quietly. When Marissa and I got married. He said family helps family. He said the Hollis name could open doors. And it did, I agreed. It opened a lot of doors. Better interest rates. Better terms. Better everything. But those doors stay open as long as you're family. Marissa decided she didn't want to be family anymore. So the doors closed. That's not revenge, Harold. That's just how the system works. She didn't know. He was shouting again. She's not a business person. She doesn't understand these things. Maybe she should have asked before she decided to publicly humiliate me at dinner while announcing her new relationship with a guy who looks like he sells timeshares. Grant is none of my business, I interrupted. Just like your business is about to be none of mine. See how that works? Harold pulled out one of my kitchen chairs and sat down without being invited. He looked defeated. Broken. Like someone had just explained to him that everything he thought was his was actually borrowed, and now the loan was being called in. For a second, just a second, I almost felt bad. Then I remembered the engagement party where he'd spent an hour telling everyone how his daughter could do better than me. I remembered the Christmas where he'd made a joke about how the Hollis family money was old money, which means it's almost gone. I remembered every condescending comment, every backhanded compliment, every time he'd treated me like I was lucky to be married to his precious daughter. The almost guilt evaporated like morning dew in the desert. Can we fix this? Harold asked, and his voice was different now. Smaller. Desperate. There has to be a way to fix this. I pulled out the chair across from him and sat down, adopting my best concerned friend expression. Sure. There's a way. It's actually pretty simple. His head snapped up. What? What do I need to do? Invent time travel. His face fell. Benjamin. No, seriously. Go back in time and tell your daughter that the Hollis name isn't just a name. Tell her it's a contract, a legacy, a network of benefits and protections that took 5 generations to build. Tell her that dropping it to be with her real man is possibly the dumbest financial decision anyone in your family has ever made. And that's including your brother who bought that restaurant that served nothing but mac and cheese variations. That restaurant was ahead of its time, Harold muttered. It went bankrupt in 4 months. The mac and cheese market wasn't ready for innovation. I almost laughed. Even in crisis, Harold couldn't admit defeat on the mac and cheese thing. Look, here's the reality. Marissa voluntarily disassociated herself from the Hollis name. The trust documents are crystal clear. Provision 9b. Voluntary name disassociation equals permanent forfeiture. Permanent, Harold. That's not a negotiable word. But surely there's an exception. A grace period. Something. There's not. My grandfather wrote those provisions specifically to prevent situations like this. He didn't want people treating the Hollis name like a rental car. Something you use for convenience and return when you find something shinier. So that's it. My business collapses because my daughter fell in love. Your business collapses because your daughter decided the Hollis name wasn't good enough for her. There's a difference. If she'd just divorced me like a normal person, you'd be fine. The trust has divorce provisions. Spousal support, division of assets, all that stuff. But she didn't divorce me and keep the name. She divorced me and threw the name away like it was trash. Like I was trash. Like my entire family was trash. Harold was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "She was unhappy. I know. She felt ignored. I know that too. You worked too much. You didn't pay attention to her." "Harold," I said, leaning forward, "I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to really hear it. Yes, I worked a lot. Yes, our marriage had problems. Yes, I probably could have been a better husband. But you know what I didn't do? I didn't publicly humiliate her. I didn't announce at a dinner party that I was leaving her for a real woman. I didn't post about it on social media with hashtags. I didn't bring my mistress to meet her family while we were still married. Grant isn't. Grant was at the dinner, Harold, sitting 2 tables over like some kind of poorly planned surprise party. She coordinated this. She planned it. She wanted maximum drama and minimum dignity. So forgive me if I'm not feeling particularly charitable about making sure her decision doesn't have consequences." He stood up slowly, like his legs weren't quite working right. "My employees, they have families." And there it was. The guilt card. The innocent bystanders card. The think of the children card, except with middle-aged people who had mortgages and dental insurance. "How many employees?" I asked. 37. "And how many of them knew about Marissa's affair before I did?" His silence was answer enough. "That's what I thought," I said. "You knew, didn't you? You knew she was seeing Grant. You knew she was planning to leave. And you didn't say anything because you thought I'd just roll over and take it. You thought I was too nice, too passive, too weak to fight back. I thought you loved her. I did love her. Past tense. But love doesn't mean letting someone destroy you and then asking for permission to be heard about it." Harold walked to the door like a man heading to his own execution. He paused with his hand on the doorknob. "She's still my daughter." "I know," I said. "And that's why you should probably have a conversation with her about the difference between courage and stupidity. Because what she did took guts. Just really, really dumb guts." He left without another word. I watched through the window as he got into his car. A nice car, probably financed through those business loans he was about to lose. And just sat there for a full 5 minutes with his hands on the steering wheel, staring at nothing. Then he drove away. I went back to the kitchen and made another grilled cheese. The first one had gotten cold during the drama, and cold grilled cheese is a tragedy nobody should endure. My phone buzzed. A text from Gerald. "Harold Mitchell visited you. How did it go? How do you know he visited me? I have my ways. Also, he called me from your driveway screaming about legal malpractice. Is it malpractice if the law is working exactly as written?" That's what I told him. He hung up on me. I'm having it bronzed. I smiled at my phone and took a bite of fresh, hot, perfectly melted grilled cheese. Life was good. Complicated, definitely. Messy, absolutely. But good. Really, really good. By Friday, the universe had apparently decided to put on a masterclass in cause and effect, and I had front row seats to the greatest show on earth. I'm talking chaos with a capital C, the kind of beautiful disaster you can't look away from even if you wanted to. And trust me, I absolutely did not want to. I started my morning the way any reasonable person would, with coffee that cost more per pound than most people's car payments and a spreadsheet Gerald had sent me titled Cascade Analysis. The man was documenting Marissa's self-destruction like it was a scientific experiment. There were columns. There were footnotes. There was even a graph showing the timeline of consequences, color-coded by severity. Red was financially catastrophic, orange was significantly problematic, and yellow was mildly inconvenient, but still funny. The spreadsheet was mostly red and orange. Very little yellow. Marissa had really committed to the bit. Let me walk you through the domino effect, because it was truly a thing of beauty. First domino, Marissa's scholarship fund. See, what most people don't know is that she'd been taking online classes for the past 2 years, working towards some kind of degree in interior design or lifestyle coaching, or something equally vague that rich people do when they want to feel productive without actually being productive. The tuition was covered by the Hollis Family Education Fund, which sounds generous until you realize it only covers people who are actually part of the Hollis family. Guess who wasn't part of the Hollis family anymore? Her university registrar sent her an email on Tuesday morning. I know because she forwarded it to me with about 47 exclamation points and several crying emojis, explaining that her account was past due for $37,000 and she needed to make payment arrangements immediately or her enrollment would be suspended. $37,000 for online classes that she'd been taking casually. I'd been paying for someone to casually accumulate debt while she was casually planning to leave me. The irony was so thick you could spread it on toast. Second domino, her father's business loans. Harold's Commercial Enterprises, which was a fancy name for a company that managed a few strip malls and some commercial properties that always seemed to need emergency repairs, had been running on credit for years. Good credit. The kind of credit you get when the Hollis Family Trust co-signs your loans and tells the bank that yes, this man is worth the risk. Turns out when you remove that co-signer, banks start asking uncomfortable questions like, can you actually afford this? And what's your real collateral? And why are your profit margins so terrible? By Wednesday, Harold's bank had called in 3 of his major loans for review. By Thursday, they'd frozen his line of credit. By Friday morning, he'd missed payroll for the first time in 30 years, and his employees were probably Googling how to file for unemployment. And is my boss going to jail? The best part? None of this was illegal or even particularly mean. The trust was simply exercising its right to withdraw as guarantor, which was completely within its legal authority. Harold had been flying on borrowed wings, and someone had just pointed out that gravity still existed. Third domino, her brother Tyler. Oh, Tyler. Sweet. Dumb Tyler, who had somehow managed to coast through life on the assumption that his last name and his brother-in-law's connections would always be enough. Tyler had landed a prestigious internship at Whitmore and Associates. Yes, the same law firm Gerald worked for, about 6 months ago. It was supposed to be his big break, his foot in the door, his chance to prove he was more than just Harold's underachieving son who'd failed the bar exam twice and spent most of his 20s finding himself in various Southeast Asian countries that coincidentally had very cheap beer. The internship had one tiny requirement. It was part of a program specifically for family members of the firm's major clients. The Hollis Family Trust was one of those major clients. Tyler was family adjacent through Marissa. Notice the past tense there? Gerald sent me a text on Thursday afternoon. Just had to tell Tyler Mitchell his internship is being terminated. He cried. Actual tears. In my office. I had to give him tissues. This is the best day of my professional life. I texted back. Did you at least wait until he was done crying before you escorted him out? I'm not a monster. I waited until he was mostly done. Like 85% done. You're going to hell. Already have my reservation. Got the executive suite. Fourth domino, the country club membership. This one was petty, I'll admit, but sometimes petty is exactly what the doctor ordered. Marissa loved that country club. She'd spent countless hours there playing tennis with women named Brittany and Skylar, drinking rose by the pool, and attending charity luncheons where they raised money for causes they couldn't quite remember, but definitely involved underprivileged something or others. The membership was in my name. Well, technically it was in the Hollis Family Trust's name, with me and my spouse as authorized users. Except Marissa wasn't my spouse anymore, and even if she was, she'd legally changed her name to Grant, which meant she was neither a Hollis nor married to a Hollis. The club's membership director, a woman named Patricia who took the rules more seriously than most people take the 10 Commandments, had sent Marissa a very polite letter explaining that her club access had been revoked and she needed to return her membership card and parking pass immediately. Marissa posted about it on Instagram, naturally. Wow, can't believe some places are so petty they kick you out just for changing your name. Hashtag toxic behavior, hashtag moving on, hashtag real friends accept you. 17 people commented. 16 of them were her friends saying supportive things like, "You don't need them anyway," and their loss. The 17th was me. "Did you return the parking pass? Those things cost like $200 to replace." She deleted my comment immediately. But Patricia from the country club texted me. "Please thank Benjamin for reminding her about the parking pass. We were about to send it to collections." Fifth domino, the credit cards. Oh man, the credit cards. This was perhaps the most satisfying domino of all, because Marissa had been treating those cards like they were magical pieces of plastic that generated money through photosynthesis. There were 6 cards total, all linked to Hollis family accounts, all with limits that would make normal people dizzy. She'd been using them for everything. Groceries, clothes, that boutique where they sold candles that cost $80 and smelled like coastal grandmother energy, whatever the hell that meant. On Tuesday, all 6 cards were canceled. Not declined. Canceled. As in, cut up into tiny pieces by whatever algorithm manages these things. I found out about it through a very angry phone call on Wednesday morning. She'd been at Nordstrom, trying to buy shoes she absolutely did not need, when the card reader made that sad little beeping sound that means the party's over, honey. "Do you know how embarrassing that was?" She'd screamed into the phone. The cashier had to call her manager. There were people in line behind me. "Did you try using cash?" I'd asked innocently. The silence that followed was the sound of someone realizing they didn't actually have any cash because they'd been living on credit for so long they'd forgotten money could exist in physical form. Sixth domino, the car. Oh, the beautiful, perfect car situation. Marissa's Mercedes SUV, the one she'd nicknamed Lady because she was one of those people who named inanimate objects, had been a lease through one of the family accounts. A very generous lease that included insurance, maintenance, and unlimited miles because apparently that was a thing rich people negotiated for. The lease was terminated on Monday. The dealership sent a very polite tow truck on Tuesday morning while Marissa was inside Grant's apartment, probably planning their future or arguing about whose turn it was to take out the trash. She came outside to find her car gone and a note on the ground that said, "Vehicle retrieved per lease agreement termination. Personal belongings have been secured and can be collected at dealership during business hours." Grant's car was still there. The BMW she'd posed in front of for Instagram. Except it turned out that BMW was also a lease, and not a particularly good one. Grant was paying about twice what the car was worth because his credit score was apparently somewhere between questionable and should probably take the bus. When Marissa called me crying about the car, I said, "Well, at least you have Grant's BMW. It has a weird smell," she sobbed. "And the passenger seat doesn't recline. Sounds like a real man's car to me," I said and hung up before she could respond. By Friday afternoon, my phone was blowing up. Not from Marissa, surprisingly. She'd gone radio silent, which either meant she was plotting my murder or she'd finally run out of tears. Both seemed equally likely. No, the calls were from everyone else. Her friends, her family, even Grant, who left me a voicemail that was 40% swearing, 30% threats of legal action, and 30% the sound of Marissa crying in the background. I listened to the whole thing, saved it for posterity, and then blocked his number. Gerald called me around 4 p.m. "You should come into the office." "Why? Did something else happen?" "Harold's business declared bankruptcy this morning. Tyler is threatening to sue us for wrongful termination, which is hilarious because he was an at-will intern. And Marissa's mother just called asking if there's any way to work this out like adults." "What did you tell her?" "I told her adults read contracts before they sign them." She hung up on me. "You're having too much fun with this." "Benjamin, I've been a lawyer for 43 years. This is the most entertainment I've had since the Johnson Estate Battle of '03, and that involved a contested will and a parrot that could say you're not my real son." I drove to Gerald's office because honestly, what else was I going to do? Sit at home and feel guilty? That ship had sailed, crashed into an iceberg, and sunk with all hands on board. Gerald met me in the conference room with 2 glasses of scotch already poured. "To consequences," he said, raising his glass. "To people who earn them," I replied. We drank, and he showed me the rest of the cascade. The full analysis. Every single thing that had unraveled because Marissa decided the Hollis name wasn't good enough for her. It was comprehensive. It was thorough. It was absolutely devastating. And I didn't feel guilty. Not even a little bit. Because here's the thing nobody wants to say out loud. Some people need to learn that actions have consequences. Not because you're being cruel or vindictive or petty, but because that's how the world works. You can't just take, and then act surprised when the giving stops. Marissa had spent 12 years taking my name, taking my family's resources, taking the lifestyle and the status and the comfort. And then she decided it wasn't enough. She wanted more. She wanted different. She wanted a real man. Well, congratulations, Marissa. You got him. And everything that came with that choice. I left Gerald's office feeling lighter than I had in years. Not because I was happy about the destruction, I'm not a sociopath, but because I was finally free. Free from the pretending, the pleasing, the constant effort to be enough for someone who would never think I was enough. That night, I ordered pizza, watched a movie Marissa would have hated, and went to bed early. The dominoes had fallen. The consequences had arrived. And somewhere in Grant's apartment with the weird-smelling car and non-reclining passenger seat, Marissa was probably realizing that fresh starts are expensive and hashtags don't pay the rent. The denial phase of grief is supposed to be temporary, a brief stop on the journey to acceptance. But Marissa and her family had apparently decided to set up permanent residence there, complete with furniture and a mortgage they couldn't afford. I found out about the family meeting through my cousin Rachel, who works at this overpriced brunch place downtown, where they serve eggs that cost $24 and come with a side of pretentiousness. She texted me Sunday morning. Your ex-wife and her family are at table 7 having what can only be described as a collective mental breakdown. Thought you should know. Also, they ordered the truffle omelet and their card got declined. I replied, which card? All of them. They're currently arguing about who has to Venmo who. It's beautiful. I drove down there because I'm only human, and humans are drawn to disaster like moths to a flame that's actively insulting them. I sat at the bar where I could see table 7, but they couldn't quite see me, ordered coffee that was definitely not worth $8, and watched the show. Marissa looked rough. Not rough for Instagram, where everything is strategically disheveled. Actually rough. Like she'd been crying for 3 days straight and had forgotten that concealer existed. Her hair was in a messy bun that wasn't the cute intentional kind, and she was wearing yoga pants and a hoodie, which for Marissa was basically the equivalent of showing up in a trash bag. Grant was there too, sitting next to her with his arm around her shoulders in that performative way guys do when they want everyone to know they're being supportive, but really they're just uncomfortable and don't know what else to do with their hands. Harold was at the head of the table, naturally, because even in crisis he needed to maintain his position as patriarch. Tyler was slouched in his chair looking like someone had canceled his Netflix subscription and told him he had to get a real job. And Marissa's mother, Susan, was dabbing at her eyes with a napkin that probably cost more than the tissue box at CVS. I couldn't hear everything they were saying, but Rachel had accidentally seated herself at the table next to them to wipe down some already clean surfaces, and she was feeding me updates via text. The mom just said, "It's just a name. It shouldn't matter this much," Rachel texted. I nearly spit out my overpriced coffee. Harold is now explaining that names do matter, and she's saying that's old-fashioned thinking. Came the next text. This was better than anything Netflix had to offer. Grant apparently decided this was his moment to contribute to the conversation because I saw him lean forward with that expression men get when they think they're about to say something profound. Rachel's next text confirmed it. The boyfriend just said, in the modern world, we should be able to choose our own identities without financial consequences. I'm dying. I replied. Tell me someone is recording this. Better. The table behind them is live tweeting it. Hashtag just a name is trending locally. I pulled out my phone and checked Twitter. Sure enough, there it was. Someone with the handle at Brunch Drama had started a thread, currently witnessing a family having a breakdown over a name change at Sunday brunch. Thread incoming. Popcorn. The tweets were gold. Dad figure keeps saying, but the business and mom figure keeps saying, it's just a name. Neither is listening to the other. Hashtag just a name. Daughter is crying into what I think used to be Eggs Benedict. Boyfriend looks like he wants to be literally anywhere else. Hashtag just a name. Someone just said, maybe if we explain it to Benjamin, and dad figure laughed. Like, actually laughed. Out loud. Hashtag just a name. Update. Their card got declined. Dad is now lecturing about financial responsibility while pulling out a different card. The irony is thick. Hashtag just a name. I was enjoying this way too much. I should probably have felt bad about it. I didn't. My phone rang. Gerald. I answered quietly, keeping my eye on table 7. Are you at the greenhouse? He asked. How do you? My wife is at the table behind the Mitchells. She's the one tweeting. She says Harold looks like he's about to have an aneurysm, and can we expedite his health insurance cancellation? Your wife is at brunch drama? Married her for her sense of humor. She's asking if you want her to go over and say hello. Absolutely not. This is perfect as is. Don't touch it. She says Marissa just told Grant that Ben will come around eventually because he's too nice to stay mad. I laughed. Actually laughed, right there at the bar. Too nice. She thinks I'm too nice. You were too nice, Gerald corrected. Past tense. Current you is delightfully vindictive. I approve. I watched as Susan reached across the table and took Marissa's hand in that maternal way that's supposed to be comforting. Rachel texted, Mom just said we'll fix this. It's America. Everything can be fixed with the right lawyer. I hate to break it to her. Tell her we have the right lawyer and he's on my side. I texted back. At table 7, Tyler finally seemed to be contributing to the conversation. He was gesturing wildly, apparently having found his voice now that he'd had time to process being fired from his internship. Rachel's next text made me choke on my coffee. The brother just suggested they sue for discrimination based on name change. He's very proud of this idea. Everyone else looks doubtful. Gerald, still on the phone, said, My wife says Tyler just proposed a discrimination lawsuit. Tell me he didn't. He did. That boy failed the bar exam twice and somehow thinks he understands civil rights law. The hubris is breathtaking. I watched as Harold apparently shot down Tyler's legal theory based on the way Tyler deflated like a sad balloon. Grant was now saying something, looking very serious and important. Rachel texted, Boyfriend is explaining that society needs to evolve past archaic family structures. Direct quote. I'm putting it on my vision board. Grant's a philosopher now, I told Gerald. Grant's unemployed. My wife looked him up. He got laid off from his sales job 3 weeks ago and hasn't told Marissa yet. He's been going to Starbucks every morning and pretending to work. You're joking. I never joke about financial instability in my adversaries. It's too delicious. This was the gift that kept on giving. Marissa had left me for a real man who was currently faking having a job while lecturing about societal evolution over a brunch he couldn't afford. The check arrived at table 7. I watched Harold pull out another credit card. The server came back, shook his head. Harold tried a third card. Same result. Susan offered hers. Declined. Grant finally pulled out his wallet with this resigned expression like he knew what was coming. His card worked, but based on the way his jaw clenched, it had probably maxed out whatever remaining credit he had. Rachel texted, The boyfriend just paid. He looks like he's going to cry. This is the best shift I've ever worked. I'm naming my firstborn after you. I accept this honor, I texted back. The Mitchell family was standing up now, gathering their things, and I could see the exact moment when Susan spotted me at the bar. Her eyes went wide. She said something to Harold, who turned and looked directly at me. I raised my coffee cup in a friendly salute. Harold's face went through about 5 different expressions in 3 seconds, landing somewhere between fury and exhaustion. Susan looked like she wanted to come over and either hug me or slap me. I genuinely couldn't tell which. Marissa saw me last. Her face crumpled in this awful way that might have made me feel guilty if I hadn't spent the last hour watching her entire family rationalize away her mistakes like they were discussing a parking ticket instead of financial suicide. Grant put his arm around her and steered her toward the exit, shooting me a look that was probably supposed to be intimidating, but mostly just looked like indigestion. Tyler gave me the finger as he walked past. Very mature, really showcasing that advanced emotional intelligence. Harold stopped at the bar. Just stopped. Stood there looking at me like I was a puzzle he couldn't solve. It's just a name, I said quietly, repeating what I'd heard through Rachel's intel network. That's what you all keep saying, right? It's just a name. Shouldn't matter this much. You're enjoying this, he said, and it wasn't a question. I'm enjoying my coffee, I corrected, which I can afford, using money from accounts that are in my name. The name I kept. Funny how that works. She's my daughter. And she was my wife. She chose to stop being my wife. She chose to stop being a Hollis. Those were her choices, Harold. Active, deliberate, publicly announced choices. I'm just letting her live with them. Susan appeared at Harold's elbow. Benjamin, please. Can't we talk about this? Like adults. Adults read the fine print before they sign documents, I said. Adults ask questions when they don't understand something. Adults don't announce life-changing decisions at dinner parties and then act surprised when those decisions have consequences. But surely there's some way. There isn't, I said, not unkindly. The trust provisions are clear. They're also permanent. Marissa can change her name back if she wants. She can marry Grant or leave Grant or join the circus. But she's not getting those benefits back. That door closed when she walked through it. Harold leaned in close. My employees are going to lose their jobs. Your employees worked for a business that was built on borrowed credibility. Maybe they should have worked for a business that was built on actual value. You're a bastard, Susan said, and there was venom in her voice. No, I corrected. I'm a Hollis. There's a difference, as your daughter recently discovered. They left. All of them. A sad parade of people who'd spent the last hour trying to convince themselves that reality was negotiable. Rachel came over and sat next to me at the bar. That was the most epic thing I've ever witnessed. You're my hero. I'm really not. You absolutely are. Do you know how many customers I deal with who treat service workers like garbage because they've never had to face consequences? Watching someone actually experience cause and effect is like witnessing a unicorn. Gerald's wife appeared on my other side. Martha Pemberton, she said, extending her hand. Professional gossip and amateur justice warrior. That was beautiful. I've already scheduled a follow-up thread for when they realize the unemployment benefits won't cover Grant's car payment. You researched his car payment? I research everything. It's a sickness. She grinned. Gerald's told me all about you. I'm glad someone finally activated Provision 9B. That clause has been sitting there for decades like Chekhov's gun, just waiting for someone to be stupid enough to trigger it. I didn't trigger it, I said. Marissa did. Exactly, Martha said. That's what makes it so perfect. She built her own prison and then locked herself inside while complaining about the architecture. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This isn't over. I showed it to Martha and Gerald, who had just arrived. Gerald took my phone, typed something, and handed it back. The message he'd sent read, "You're absolutely right. It's not over. It's permanent. Best wishes in your fresh start. Ben." Martha high-fived her husband. And I finished my overpriced coffee, left a generous tip for Rachel, and walked out of that brunch place feeling better than I had in 12 years. Because it wasn't just a name. It never was. And now everyone knew it. There's something deeply satisfying about official correspondence. Not email. Not text messages. Actual letters, printed on high-quality paper with embossed letterhead, delivered by the United States Postal Service like humanity did back when we had patience and attention spans. Gerald called it the formalization of consequence. I called it the greatest hits album of Marissa's mistakes, professionally bound and delivered with tracking confirmation. The letters went out on Monday morning, and by Monday afternoon, my phone had turned into a device that exclusively received rage and panic. I turned off notifications and just let it vibrate on my desk like a very angry and confused fish while I worked on absolutely nothing important. Rachel texted me around 2 p.m. Your ex-wife just came into the restaurant screaming about mail. We had to ask her to leave. She's sitting in her car in the parking lot. Well, Grant's car. You know what I mean. Is she crying? I texted back. Crying, yelling, possibly having a conversation with God. Hard to tell. Want me to bring her a water? You're too nice for this world, Rachel. I know. It's a burden. I knew what was in those letters. Gerald had shown me drafts last week, and I'd approved them with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for puppies or finding money in your coat pocket. There were 7 letters total, each one a masterpiece of legal precision and barely contained schadenfreude. Letter 1 went to Marissa's new address at Grant's apartment, a 2-bedroom in a complex that advertised luxury living, but really meant the appliances are from this decade, and there's a gym nobody uses. The envelope was thick, official, and impossible to ignore. Inside was a comprehensive list of every single benefit she'd lost, itemized with the kind of detail you'd expect from the IRS if the IRS actually cared about your feelings, which it doesn't. But Gerald apparently did in the most savage way possible. The letter started with a paragraph that was pure Gerald. Dear Ms. Grant, this correspondence serves to inform you of the status changes resulting from your voluntary disassociation from the Hollis family name, as executed on date, at restaurant name. in the presence of multiple witnesses and subsequently publicized via social media platforms. Translation: Hey, remember when you publicly dumped your husband? We do. We have receipts. Literal receipts from the restaurant. Then came the list. Oh, that beautiful, devastating list. Trust access, revoked ***. Effective immediately. All distributions, dividends, and discretionary allowances terminated. Estimated annual value, $127,000. I'd done the math with Gerald. Marissa had been receiving roughly 10 grand a month in various forms. Dividends from the family investments, allowances for household expenses, distributions from the trust that were labeled as family support, but really just meant money for being married to a Hollis. She'd never asked where it came from. She'd just spent it on organic groceries and yoga retreats, and that subscription service that sent her a new outfit every month that she'd wear once and then donate to charity to feel philanthropic. Estate privileges, revoked ***. All access to family properties terminated. This includes, but is not limited to, primary residence, vacation properties, and any facilities managed under Hollis Holdings LLC. The primary residence was the penthouse. The one with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view that made visitors say things like, "Wow, and how much does this place cost?" The vacation properties included a beach house in the Outer Banks and a cabin in Colorado that Marissa had used exactly twice but liked knowing she had access to. Medical coverage, revoked ***. Family health insurance policy terminated. COBRA continuation rights information attached. This was the one that probably hurt most. The Hollis family health insurance was the kind of coverage where you could walk into any doctor's office, say, "I have a headache," and they'd give you an MRI just because they could. No copays, no deductibles, no fighting with insurance representatives named Chad who sounded like they'd rather be literally anywhere else. COBRA, the thing where you can keep your insurance if you pay the full premium yourself, was going to cost her about $800 a month, for a plan significantly worse than what she'd had. Education grants, revoked ***. All tuition assistance and educational funding terminated. Outstanding balances are the sole responsibility of the grant recipient. That $37,000 she owed the university? All hers now. Every penny. The letter even helpfully included the registrar's contact information in case she needed to set up a payment plan. Credit facility access, revoked ***. All authorized user privileges terminated across all family accounts. No more cards. No more emergencies that somehow always involved shoes or handbags or that boutique where they sold scarves that cost more than most people's rent. Club memberships, revoked ***. Country club, athletic club, and all associated recreational facilities. No more tennis with Brittany and Skylar. No more rows by the pool. No more charity luncheons where they pretended to care about literacy while drinking wine that cost more per bottle than the books they were supposedly supporting. Legal representation, terminated ***. The firm of Whitmore and Associates will no longer provide legal counsel or representation. This meant if Marissa wanted to fight any of this, which she couldn't, but she might try, she'd need to hire her own lawyer. With money she didn't have. To fight a case she couldn't win. Against Gerald, who'd been doing this for 43 years and collected difficult cases like some people collected stamps. The letter ended with a paragraph that I'd personally written and Gerald had polished to legal perfection. These actions are not punitive in nature, but rather represent the automatic implementation of trust provisions designed to protect family assets and maintain the integrity of the Hollis legacy. You exercised your right to change your legal name and disassociate from the family. The trust has exercised its corresponding provisions. We wish you well in your fresh start with Mr. Grant and trust that your real man will provide the support these revoked benefits previously supplied. I'd wanted to add, good luck, you're going to need it. But Gerald said that crossed the line from professionally savage to potentially actionable. He wasn't wrong, but it would have been satisfying. Letter 2 went to Harold at his business address. It was shorter, but somehow more devastating. It basically said, your loans are being called. Your credit facility is being terminated. Your net 90 terms are now net 15. Have a nice day. Gerald had added a helpful paragraph suggesting Harold consult with bankruptcy attorneys and included a list of 3 firms he recommended. The fact that all three firms were competitors of Whitmore and Associates was just Gerald's way of adding insult to injury. Letter 3 went to Tyler at his apartment, which he apparently shared with two roommates who worked in tech and played video games until 3 a.m. The letter explained that his internship termination was permanent, included documentation of every mistake he'd made during his brief tenure. Gerald kept notes on everything, and suggested he consider alternative career paths that don't require bar admission. I'd asked Gerald if that last part was necessary. He'd said, "The boy told me lawyers were basically just professional arguerizers who made up complicated words to seem smart." This is me being nice. Letters 4 through 7 went to various institutions: banks, the university, the country club, and the dealership where Marissa's car had been leased, confirming the changes and providing documentation. Gerald called these the paper trail of ruin. By Tuesday morning, Marissa had apparently received and read her letter because my phone had 17 missed calls, 9 voicemails, and a series of text messages that started with "We need to talk" and devolved into a caps lock situation that suggested she was either very angry or had forgotten where the caps lock button was and couldn't figure out how to turn it off. I listened to exactly one voicemail. It was 3 minutes of her crying, yelling about how this wasn't fair, demanding I fix this immediately, and then more crying. Somewhere in the background, I could hear Grant saying, "Just hang up, baby, he's not worth it," which was rich coming from a guy who was currently being supported by a woman who could no longer support herself. I deleted all the voicemails without listening to the rest and sent one text. Everything in that letter is legally binding and permanent. I suggest you focus on your fresh start. P.S. The part about me being too nice to stay mad aged poorly. Regards, Ben. Wednesday brought my favorite response. A letter arrived at my house. My house, the one Marissa no longer had keys to, written on notebook paper in her handwriting. Actual notebook paper, like we were in middle school passing notes in homeroom. The letter was 6 pages long and covered everything from "You're being unreasonable" to "What about the good times we had" to "Grant says you're probably just jealous." There was even a paragraph where she offered to work things out if I'd just call off the lawyers and restore the benefits. She signed it Marissa with a heart over the I like she used to do when we were dating. No last name, just Marissa. I showed it to Gerald over lunch at a steakhouse where the cheapest item on the menu was $40 and worth every penny. "She wants to negotiate," he said, reading through it while cutting into a ribeye that was cooked to absolute perfection. "There's nothing to negotiate. I know that. You know that. She apparently doesn't know that." He took a bite, chewed thoughtfully, and said, "Want me to respond?" "Officially, is there any other way?" I thought about it for exactly 2 seconds. "Yes, but keep it short." Gerald pulled out his phone, typed something, and showed me the screen. "Ms. Grant, Mr. Hollis has asked me to respond on his behalf. The provisions outlined in our previous correspondence are non-negotiable and permanent. Per the trust documentation you should have read before changing your name, there is no appeals process, no grace period, and no mechanism for restoration of benefits. We recommend you direct your energy toward your new life with Mr. Grant rather than attempting to renegotiate consequences of choices you made freely and publicly. Regards, Gerald Pemberton, Senior Partner, Whitmore and Associates." "It's beautiful," I said. "I know." He sent it from his official firm email, probably while she was checking her phone for the 1,000th time hoping I'd changed my mind. Thursday was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that happens right before something either explodes or dies completely. Friday afternoon, I got a text from Rachel. "Your ex-wife is back at the restaurant. She's with her mom. They're both crying into salads. Thought you should know." I didn't go watch this time. I'd seen enough. The letters had done their job. The consequences were real, documented, and impossible to ignore. That night, I poured myself a glass of that expensive bourbon, sat on my balcony overlooking the city, and raised my glass to absolutely no one. "To real men," I said quietly. "The kind who read contracts, respect legacy, and understand that some things, like family names, actually matter." Somewhere across the city, Marissa was probably Googling how to undo a legal name change quickly, while Grant was probably Googling how to afford a girlfriend who's suddenly expensive. And I was sitting on my balcony, drinking bourbon I could afford, in a home I owned outright, with a last name that meant something. The letters had been sent. The message was delivered. And the only person who could have prevented all of this was the same person who'd signed her name to the divorce papers with a heart over the I. Consequences, it turns out, don't care about your feelings. They just care about your signature. The quarterly Hollis family board dinner was the kind of event where people wore their actual good jewelry and remembered which fork to use for what course. It was held at the family estate, my Uncle Richard's place, which looked like someone had taken a European castle and given it a moderate American makeover. Harold showed up early. Bold move for someone who technically wasn't invited anymore. He was waiting by the entrance when I arrived, looking like he'd aged about 15 years in 3 weeks. His suit was wrinkled, which for Harold was basically the equivalent of showing up naked. "Benjamin, please," he started, but I just walked past him toward the door. My Uncle Richard, the family chairman and the guy who made Gerald look warm and fuzzy, was standing in the foyer. He looked at Harold the way a cat looks at a bird it's about to eat. "Harold," Uncle Richard said, not unkindly but not warmly either. "This meeting's for name holders only." "But Marissa," Harold tried. "Chose to be a grant," Uncle Richard finished smoothly. "Grants aren't on this ledger." 3 weeks after the board dinner, I was at the downtown shelter where I volunteered every Thursday morning. It wasn't some rich guy guilt thing. I'd been doing it since college, way before Marissa, way before any of this drama. Folding blankets, sorting donations, occasionally helping someone fill out paperwork for housing assistance. Simple work that actually mattered. I was folding my 47th blanket when I heard heels clicking on the concrete floor. Expensive heels. The kind that echo in a way that announces, "I don't belong here, but I'm trying really hard to look humble." Marissa. She looked different. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup, or at least way less than usual. She was wearing jeans and a plain sweater, both of which I recognized from 3 years ago because apparently buying new clothes required money she didn't have anymore. "Ben," she said, and her voice cracked on just my name. I kept folding. "Marissa, can we talk?" "We are talking. Please." She stepped closer. Her mascara was smudged. She'd been crying. Again. I didn't know it would go this far. I set down the blanket and looked at her. Really looked at her. "You thought you were upgrading, didn't you? Thought you were trading in an old model for something newer, shinier, better." "I just wanted to feel chosen," I finished. "I know. You said that at dinner. Right before you chose to publicly humiliate me and legally destroy your own financial stability." "Grant and I broke up," she said quietly. "Of course they did. When? Last week. Turns out his consulting business was unemployment and lies. He couldn't afford me." His words, not mine. I almost laughed. "Almost. So now you're here. Looking for what exactly? Forgiveness? Money? A time machine?" "I just wanted to feel like someone chose me, Ben. Like I mattered to someone." "I chose you," I said, and my voice was harder than I intended. 17 years ago, with a mortgage, a minivan, and joint tax returns. I chose you every single day for 12 years. You just didn't think that counted because it wasn't exciting enough for Instagram." She wiped her eyes. "Can I come back?" I picked up another blanket. Started folding. "Sure. As soon as my last name does." Silence. The kind that feels like acceptance finally arriving way too late. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know you are. Sorry doesn't pay rent, though." She stood there for another minute, maybe hoping I'd change my mind, maybe just trying to figure out what to say. Finally, she turned and walked away, those expensive heels clicking against concrete until the sound faded completely. I finished folding the blanket. Some choices you can undo. Some you can't. And some people have to learn the difference the hard way. The Hollis Foundation dinner came 2 months later. It was the kind of event where people donated money they'd never miss to causes they'd probably forget about by Tuesday. But at least the champagne was good and the tax deductions were better. This year's invitations had a new line printed at the bottom. Attendance restricted to verified Hollis name holders and their guests. Uncle Richard's idea. Gerald approved it. I just smiled when I saw it. The ballroom was elegant. Velvet curtains, classical quartet, centerpieces that probably cost more than most people's car payments. I gave a short speech about legacy and responsibility, the kind of thing my grandfather would have said if he'd been better at public speaking and worse at day drinking. "Some people think legacy is money," I said, looking out at the room full of relatives who actually understood what our name meant. "It's not. Legacy is the name attached to it. The reputation. The responsibility. And if you don't respect that name, someone else will inherit your seat. Polite applause. A few nods from the older generation who remembered when names actually meant something. After the speech, I stepped outside for air. That's when I saw her. Marissa was standing at the gate, looking through the iron bars like a kid outside a toy store. She wasn't trying to get in, just watching. Her hair was different, shorter, cheaper cut. Her coat was from Target, not that boutique she used to love. Inside, the orchestra started playing, for he's a jolly good fellow. Uncle Richard's tradition whenever someone successfully protected the family legacy. I raised my glass toward the window where Marissa could see me. To real men, I said quietly, though she couldn't hear me. Inside, the entire room raised their glasses in response. Marissa turned and walked away, disappearing into the November cold. And I went back inside, where it was warm, where my name meant something, where consequences had finally finished teaching their lesson. Some names you earn, some names you inherit, and some names you lose because you thought hashtags mattered more than history.